1, 2, 3. Keep talking a little bit.
All right. This is
Chronicles of Charles.
Chronicles of Charles. Is that it?
I don't know. You're the title guy. You know, what are we calling this?
I haven't thought about that.
The Great Adventures.
Well,
Charles
the
Feil.
adventures of there's got to be a better title.
Well, maybe it'll come to us.
It'll come to us at some point, and then I'll just come up with it. That'll make sense.
Later on.
Let's see how it all sounds.
Yeah.
See if it has some glue to stick to the wall. This is where you start the editing process. This is just warming up.
Yeah, we're just warming up. This is,
episode
episode 0.1.
A life well lived.
A life well lived. That's pretty good.
Actually, that would be good. A life well lived.
A life well lived. Well, and hopefully lots more of it to live as well.
Well, I mean, in a way, this moment of dealing with this pancreatic cancer is a turning point of kind of reflecting backwards, but also looking how to go forwards in a maybe very different way.
Yeah.
It's not just about pounding out geography and roads and people, but more of another, more introspective journey. Going into oneself and finding, what am I really all about? What have I been doing? What has led me down these roads? Is this the turning point where you go, pay attention to your inside journey, much more than the outside.
Interesting.
Because this is all kind of happening internally, so I'm trying to get my head wrapped around how to deal with that. It's not to say that the two things can't blend, the outside and the inside, but what is the message in the bottle with all that?
So, you've spent a lot of your life, like you alluded to, traveling.
Yeah.
It's been a big part of your identity. I think of you as somebody who is always on the road and looking for that adventure. It seems like that has brought a lot of introspective realizations as well. Do you feel like that's true?
Well, absolutely. I think the moment that I first realized that travel was really what I wanted to do when I was a small child, actually. It's a very vivid memory in Arlington, Virginia. And my parents were living in this duplex, and we were all kind of let outside in this fenced-in area. And I used to look outside of the fence trying to figure out how to get out of here. In fact, I even started a fire once in the backyard just to make a protest against the fence, I think.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I started a fire. My father came out and said, "I am going to call the police on you." And I went, "What?" He was quite angry with me. And I was always it's always been my moniker of busting out of fences, don't fence me in kind of thing, where I don't like barriers, so I want to punch through them. So that fence has been always a metaphorical symbol for me. It's such an odd memory, but it's so clear, and how I'm just grabbing onto this fence wanting to get out.
Like a dog in a cage.
Yeah, right. It felt caged in. But going back to traveling, and what is it about that movement? I think for me, and I think for a lot of travelers, it's what's on the other side of that fence? What's to be experienced? Who am I going to meet? How are they going to change my life? How do I solve the problems of getting from here to there and back. And how do I figure out how to finance it? Because traveling around the world takes some nickels and dimes. And what I did discover is that it isn't how much change you have in your pocket. It's how creative you get with picking up change.
Along the way.
Exactly. Yeah, picking it up and turning it into a piece of gold in a way. And I found that has kind of always been true in my life. And photography was a way of making that change, that metamorphosis of being able to take this coin and turn it into another coin and another, and to get to where I wanted to go with it. So that's where the creativity comes in. So I think traveling taught you how to be creative, how to find the magic in every situation that you would get into. It was an interesting, Pepe used to say, big problem, big solution. And that is exactly the way you have to think when you're on the road, when you get stuck somewhere and you're trying to figure out, well, how do I get out of here? What am I going to do next? I have very little capital, but I have a lot of imagination and a connection. And I always found that other people came and helped you out, and no matter where you were and whether you spoke the language or not. So I really learned that people are the treasure. They're the ones that will come to your rescue, or they're the ones that would add something by sharing a part of them with you, without condition, without fear, just out of really embracing it. One of the things that I discovered along the way with people, and especially third world countries, is how important community is. Their tribe, their community is what keeps it together. They don't have expendable wealth, they have subsistence living, basically. So they need each other. Family is incredibly important in most everywhere in the world. Less so, I find, in the Western world, where people want to run away and go off, and they're not as attached to their family. But it's much easier here to so-called pull yourself up by your bootstraps. You have more opportunities for sure. They don't have politically the opportunities to break out of that system.
So just to back up for a second, we're talking very broadly about tribal living and people in other parts of the world, quote unquote. Specifically, we were talking about Africa, and what were some of the places that you went specifically where you felt like this was true?
Well, when I was in Africa in the mid-'70s, and I went there to work with this Jane Goodall production, Jane Goodall in the World of Animal Behavior, I was...
Hey, no phones in the studio.
Yeah, I better turn this off. Somebody's trying to call me, but I don't want to. I'm not going to do it right now.
That's Jeff?
Yeah. Well.
Hey, let's get him on the phone and record it.
No, I don't think so. I will.
Well.
No, it's okay.
Tell him you call him back.
No, I'll talk tomorrow or something. We'll have a chance to talk to him.
Yeah.
I'm not into that mode right now, so I don't want to do that.
Well, go ahead and finish telling me the tribes that you visited where we were experiencing these sorts of more isolated communities that maybe didn't have the opportunity to travel outside of their community, and what were some of those places and those tribes that you encountered?
Well, in Africa specifically, in the beginning I didn't have a lot of exposure to those cultural things until I kind of got out of the Serengeti and went traveling. I was pretty much located with a job to do film, and so that precluded visiting villages other than the Maasai. which was a place where we used to go to get a cattle and have meat and stuff like that. I mean, there's no supermarkets out here, so everything was really kind of bare bones. You had to negotiate for food. You know, there was a lodge there. Unfortunately, there could be some provisions brought in, but in general, anything fresh was coming from the local areas, and it wasn't really a lot of farming. It was mostly meat. Okay. I remember one moment.
This is the Maasai?
Yeah. I remember one time
And where?
That was in the Ndutu area where George Dove, this kind of crusty old guy who ran a hunting lodge at one time. He was, one of those great white hunter guides. I mean, he had this handlebar mustache and his white beard. I mean, he was a classic Hemingway-looking kind of character. Could have been in a Hemingway novel, and he had that British accent, and he talked, and he was tough as nails, and he doesn't take shit from anybody. And he would sit at dinners, at the lodge when we would go up there and just pontificate about the world before Africa became that, Kenya anyway was liberated from the British, It's a mess now, I tell you, it was so good back then, men were men and we could do what we wanted and we didn't have to put up with this bullshit with these Kikuyu folks, and I mean, George was a piece of work. But there we had what was called chaps. These were guys that would come and work, and they get paid maybe 50 cents a day or something, and they would clean your laundry and do stuff. And they were always, Memsab is the woman, and then they would talk about Bwana. You were Bwana type of thing, and
what
teach
did that
a little
mean?
Bwana, big guy. You were the Bonastana, they were just the workers. But this is how they were brought up, and they were grateful to have some work to make some money. But the Maasai were these people, those are the chaps, the guys that worked around the camp. But the Maasai were these elegant, gorgeous people that lived in dung huts. These are huts made from the dung of the cattle. The cattle are sacred to them. It's their wealth. They don't often trade the cattle for anything, but they will make exceptions. They use it to subsist on. Mm-hmm. But these women would come out with these big, beautiful white teeth and smiles and would stand so elegantly and proud of their dung hut that they lived in. They didn't smell it, and there were flies all around them and everything. And just never, they were almost like spirits. You just kind of look and go, this is the way they do. And all of them were happy. I mean, even the men, they had their roles and they played them right to the hilt. This is the way they worked. They followed the wildlife, basically. They would migrate with the migration.
So they were still fairly nomadic, is what you're saying, yeah?
Yeah, very much so. They made dung huts. They just built them as they go, They would slap some wood together. They'd take the wood, and they might travel with the wood because wood was hard to get, and then they'd put it up, and, they just were very inventive and creative. And, they didn't just move every day. They would go somewhere and be there for a while, sure. And so they, they might be months somewhere wherever the wildlife was, because this is what they hunted. Mm-hmm. They're hunter and gatherers. And then I remember when I went once with one of the chaps that could speak Maasai, and he took me there and had some discussions with one of the big honchos of the Maasai, and Bwana over here wants to buy some cattle from you. And so he would go and pick the cow you could have. He would go through the herd and say, you can have that one. We didn't have FDA or anything like that. You don't know what you were eating. Who knows? Whatever I ate now might be a part of the effect of what I've got now. in an odd way. And so then they would pick it, and then they would do a ceremony where they would chinge it, which is cut the throat, and they would get the blood from the cattle, and they would mix it with some milk, and it was kind of a sour thing that would turn into kind of a alcoholic beverage. Really.
Oh, they would let it ferment?
Yeah, they would ferment
blood
it.
and milk?
Right, blood and milk would ferment, and then they, would drink it. But one of the rituals they had was that they carved out a kidney just after it was killed, and they'd open it up, and they grab the kidney, and they take a bite out of it and pass it around. It was sort of a ritual of saying, and they'd be laughing and, just sort of enjoying the whole thing. Having this white dude with them, and eating it. But they...
and you ate it?
Yeah, I ate it too.
How was that? How did that taste?
Oh, God, who knows? I was just in the moment, and it probably tasted terrible, but I just did it.
Sure, the experience of
just doing it
takes you beyond.
I didn't want to look like, oh no, I can't do that.
No, of course not.
You're Mikasa Sukas, I guess. You're in their house, so
I believe when in Rome.
When in Rome, that's probably
cliche there.
That's right. That's right. That is true. Edit that part out.
Oh no, it's all staying in.
Oh no!
It's all staying.
No! Don't do my faux pas. Eliminate all those.
Oh no! This is going to be
I was trying to think
a full picture.
When in
this
Rome,
is all part of your...
do as the Romans, but that really wasn't quite the same thing. It was more in the spirit of being welcomed in, and it's like, if I'm making dinner for you here at my house, you're going to be gracious and eat, and whether you like it or not, you're still going to,
It would have been rude for you to refuse.
It just would have been like, no, I couldn't do that. It just wouldn't be right. It didn't seem it at the time.
Yeah,
and I had no idea how I was going to. Even butcher this thing. First of all, we had to get it back to camp, because it's not like we cut it up or it was cut up in pieces. There it is, and the guts are out and stuff, and then you got to haul this thing back in your
skin on
Land Rover.
Right?
Oh yeah, and the whole thing. You got to hang it up and dry it, and I'm like, oh man, what the fuck am I doing here? I have no idea.
And you didn't have a refrigerator,
no,
I don't imagine, right?
No, we didn't have anything like that. Well, we did, I think, we had something up there to put some of that, because we couldn't leave it out. It would have been, I'd made the mistake of taking the carcass and throwing it in the back of this Toyota thing that was my transportation there, a little Toyota Land Rover type vehicle, 4-wheel drive, and it had a canvas top on the back, and I kind of willy-nilly threw the stuff in. Well, that was like the biggest invitation for a smorgasbord for the wildlife out there, so I'd have hyenas jumping and tearing the hell out of the canvas just to get to the meat.
Okay, so all right, so you're in this tenting lodge, and one of the chaps takes you out.
Well, yeah, he was one of George Dove's workers, or chaps as we would call them. They always called them chaps. So George lent him to us because he could speak Maasai.
Right.
So I went with him to the Maasai, and
right.
That was where it's like going to the supermarket, right? I think I'm going to go down to the butcher over here, right?
Right.
A little different.
Right. And you were going because who were you at this lodge with?
Well, I was working with Hugo Van Lawick then to make wildlife films for this TV series, Jane Goodall and the World of Animal Behavior. So he had this contract to make, 4 or 5 films. He had made the Wild Dogs of Africa, and that was released, I think, on, I'm not sure whether it was PBS or what at that time, but it was, a show that was on TV. And it turned into being a really popular little piece. It won an Emmy or Academy Award or something because of its great story. And the way he made films was he would just shoot and shoot all kinds of stuff. And then in the editing room, it was made. Mm-hmm. There happened to be a runt of a dog in that Wild Dogs sequence that became the hero, so to speak, the one that survived, Didn't look like he was going to make it, and then it was a survival story, so, it tugs at the heartstrings. And
sure.
So anyway, there was this production company, well, it was a film company. Somehow he got this contract, and your mom and I were living in San Francisco at the time, and through Jaji,
that's my mom's dad.
We were introduced to Jane and Hugo, and they were desperate to get something together to put together a crew for Africa. So it was the classic thing of being in the right place at the right time, and so we were invited to come along to do that. It wasn't a great pay, but who cared? It was the experience of, you were flown, all of a sudden it was like, we're flying to Africa in a month, and wrap up your life here in San Francisco, and you're on a plane, and wow, who wouldn't want to have that experience?
Yeah. And how you said you were 27 at this point?
I was about 27.
And this was what year?
I think we got there late 74, 75. And so anyway, can you imagine all of a sudden you're flying into the night, bingo, you're land in Nairobi. It's a whole different environment of faces and people, and they're speaking all these different languages, and here you are, 26, 27, going, and where are we going? What's next? I mean, that was like the beginning of what a cool adventure this is. I have no idea where we're going, what we're going to end up doing, or how it's going to turn out, but I'm all in. And at that time, your mom was too. She was like into the excitement of that. And then we got there into the lot. All of a sudden, here we are. We fly in the big airplane. We fly out of Nairobi in a little airplane, and we land on this little strip out in the middle of the Serengeti. And here's this little tenting lodge with several cats walking around the bar, and you had to bring whatever you had. We had, I think, one bottle of gin and at the time a carton of cigarettes, and that was it, and there wasn't a commissary or a store you could go to. This was it, except whatever came in from the truck that would go down to what was that city in Arusha? I think it was Arusha, Tanzania, and would bring a load of stuff in. That's how the supplies came in, once every couple of weeks. So there we were, living in a tent. And then we had our own spot. And then that's when we had our own chaps, and food was made by them. Everything was so basic. We have no idea. I mean, it was, we had some fairly new clothes when we got there. Within 2 months, it was all holes in it from the soda water. Because when they washed it, they made holes.
They washed it in soda water.
Yeah. And you always wonder why they always look like they were wearing rags. It's that because the soda water would just eat the fabric.
And why were they using soda water the other way?
Because that's all they had, fresh water. The only fresh water there was from the rain. So it was all catchments. Mm-hmm. So you had to really conserve water. Yeah. So everything else was soda water. I mean, my hair turned blonde, my teeth, and I ended up having gum disease because of all that. Just because
really?
I had to have all this, what do they call that? Periodontal stuff. Yeah, when I got back, I had, my gums are terrible. My teeth they were bleeding, and
because you're using the soda
water. Yeah.
And
they would eat toothbrushes, so you ended up with a stick after a while.
So wait, I don't understand why they had more soda water than fresh water. Where did this soda?
The water is because of the land was so acidic. Okay, it's all this white kind of stuff and dusty, and it's savanna, and right. So whatever water would land in that stuff would turn into soda. Would just be so acidic. Mm-hmm. And that's what you had to use to clean in and do all your stuff.
Okay.
So there was some collection of that in ponds, created some water catchment things. But that was not drinkable water. And, it wasn't like you had bottled water or anything.
Sure.
So that had to be collected from the rooftops and like they would do in Bisbee, they would
Sure.
do that.
Sure, yeah, you need to make sure the water doesn't touch the ground.
Right.
Before
Right.
you
Exactly.
drink it. So this is not like soda water like we would think of where it's carbonated.
Incredibly. No. This is incredibly acidic, like seawater.
Yeah.
Almost. It was sticky. It was just, showers, everything. It just put a paste on you.
Yeah.
I wish I had pictures of this somewhere of how blonde I got. Because that was the other thing. I had a limited amount of film, still stuff, and I was trying to save it for shooting wildlife and not pictures of us.
Right. Right. It wasn't like now where you're just like, I'll just snap this on my iPhone.
Exactly. Well, it was living literally on the land and with the land, and you were more like here. The zoo is where we go to look at animals. There, it was inverted. Mm-hmm. So it's where the animals were dominant and we were subservient to their wishes, so to speak.
Yeah.
We had to follow them, be with them. We were observing them. It was a very interesting time as far as not having much social exposure to anything, other than your small little pod there, living in the Serengeti, and just your whole life was surrounded. It was all about wake up and go to sleep around the wildlife. And even after, a day of spending hours in a car, just in a Land Rover, one of our vehicles, just waiting for something to happen.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I really, truly appreciated people that do that as a career. You have to have incredible patience.
A lot of waiting.
A lot of waiting for a little small moment. And that's what we were doing, waiting for a moment.
Yeah.
And the only way you get that is to be kind of accepted by that community. So we're going back to the pride, so to speak, like lions have prides, one of the films, and letting the mother, the female, would allow us to come in closer and closer. So you'd start from a distance and you'd get closer and closer to the point where the little ones would come right up to you, and even the mother would come up to you. The males never were around. They were always off. They didn't even hunt,
Typical.
It was typical men. Typical men. But there were so many fascinating moments in that period of 2 years of watching animals do the strangest things.
Yeah.
And it was really a lot of stuff with the small ones, the small little animals.
Yeah.
They were most active. But anyway, that took us... Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. And so you're part of a team. How big was the team?
Oh, at that point, it was just your mom and I and Hugo, and Jane just made cameos. She would be back in Gombe doing some more research down there, and doing the filming. There wasn't much for her to do, and her and Hugo were going through a divorce at that period, so it was unfortunate that their personal relationship was strained during the period of this, trying to make these films. So he was a pretty stressed out guy, He's a chain-smoking, nervous Nelly about everything. And, my job was to help back him up on this, for a while I was going out to look for hyenas while he was working on lions. And there's just a lot of crazy stuff going on. So even though you're out of the civilization is still there.
Sure.
The human condition.
Okay, so it's this a small team.
Very small. Yeah, no. And later on, an editor came and would edit some of the film down there.
Yeah.
But we had a separate camp near the lodge. Okay. At this point.
So you were...
So we were close by, so we just had a piece of this land, an area, and we set up tents, and we lived in these tents and everything.
In order to save money by not staying at the lodge?
Yeah. I'm sure that was a part of it.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And so it was pretty close by. It wasn't like, oh, we've got to go camp out at some place because there's a wildlife in this area.
No. It was close by because we needed some of the resources from there.
Right.
Electric, things like that. You run wires down. It was close by, but we were separate.
Okay.
And I think that he negotiated to get some tents and stuff. I think he was working on a pretty tight budget because, it wasn't like a movie crew today would get,
Sure.
The trailers coming by and setting up, big meals and nice living conditions. This was pretty much down in the dirt. So anyway, there's that story.
Yeah. Okay.
But there was many, many more. I mean, when I remember when the migration would come through, this would be...
And what's the migration?
The migration is wildebeest, zebra, all the grass vegetarians would migrate from one area to another depending on the season for water. Obviously, they were following where the grasses were green, and it so happened that there was quite a drought going on at that time. So when they came through our area, they stayed because there happened to be more grass. But this is also an active time for hunting, so all the meat eaters were out hunting, especially for newborn calves, because they're literally born and they have to get up and start running right away. Otherwise, they'll be eaten, And so they're... that was the fascinating part, is to watch this whole thing of the weaker and the stronger and the survival and how this whole mechanism worked, how the whole thing worked in life. So, but the problem was that they were very noisy, and they would honk literally day and night. And this is thousands. This is not just a couple hundred. This is thousands. As far as you could see, there was this huge group. And so, of course, there was something going on all the time. The lions were going, field day, look at this, come on, guys. All the cats were out. Anything that hunted, was there. So that was a very awakening time. And you'd think that we would have gotten a lot of great footage, but it was almost impossible because all the hunting was going on at night. So we would always see it during the day.
Interesting, because I was going to say, I was like, wow, you must have got a lot of great stuff.
No, they're all sleeping during the day, fat and happy. They don't hunt. They don't hunt to kill. They hunt to eat. And when they have filled up, they just sleep it away.
Right.
And so, meanwhile, all these animals are around them because there's thousands of them, and so.
So, were you? You mentioned you were trying to conserve film, and you were doing stills. Were you doing?
Well, no, I was doing film. No, there was no video. I was doing film.
Right.
But I had brought some of my own personal film with me, but I only had a very little amount of it.
Gotcha. So the still photographs you were doing were
for me,
personal,
right? For me. So I wish I had a lot more. I shot, but you have to understand. My camera was really pretty crude. I mean, it was a very old, early Nikon with a Yashica lens that you screwed on, and it was not of the highest quality. But that's what I had. So it was about making images, not great quality of it. So you make the best with what you've got.
Sure. And
then you make choices about how you're going to use it. So, I say stuff is around here somewhere. Someday dig out some of those photos would be fun.
You've had some framed around the house.
I did. I used to.
I remember one of a cheetah.
Yeah, right. The cheetah's still over there.
Yeah.
The cheetah's still over there. A few of them I did. when I had come back and was showing off some of the African wildlife. But I didn't have a lot. You know, if I had had all the film I wanted, I would have had tremendous amounts of documentation.
Sure.
But that's why I don't have much of us. You know,
Yeah.
I can't waste a frame on this, on anything.
Oh, no, yeah.
Not at that time. You
You're
weren't
not doing
thinking.
selfies, you know.
No, there's no
You're
selfies.
trying to get some good stuff for your photography
exactly.
career, and also to document some of those.
It would have
hit
been.
that on silent there, will you?
Yeah, it would have been fascinating. Let me just. I know what that is. Okay.
So
go.
cool. So I thought we would do one fun segment, a short segment. Let's get a dad cooking tip. Dad's cooking tip.
Oh, that's great.
Dad's cooking tip. Dad's cooking tip.
That's great.
Dad's cooking tip. So let's get what's a chef Charles favorite recipe or Dad's cooking tip.
Good cooking tip. Well, the favorite thing I like to do is cooking on the grill, the outdoor barbecue.
Guy.
Okay, I mean, and the thing is, keep it simple. Let the flavors come through on their own, but rubs, and don't put a lot of sauce on it. Just let the meat and some spices, just let it marinate into the meat and blend so that when you bite into it, it melts in your mouth. Think of food like a marshmallow. You want to bite into it and get that burst of flavor.
I love it. That's perfect. Think of food like a marshmallow. Great cooking tip from Dad. I love it. All right, Dad's cooking tip.
Oh, that's great. All right, is that a wrap for the day?
This has been Cooking Tips with Dad, and we will continue this next time. Thanks,
Yes,
Dad.
yes.
This was fun.
This was great. I love it.